my name is Henrik Hansson, and I work for Impact Hub Stockholm. And I'm joined here with my colleague Alexandra. We're also joined by Fionnuala from Axis BIC, who are supporting us in hosting this seminar today. So today is a market discovery workshop about Sweden, and we have some lovely guests and panelists. And this is within the program that is called Seeds of Bravery, which is an EU-funded accelerator program for Ukrainian startups. So just briefly about the agenda, I will start with a short introduction about the Seeds of Bravery program. Then we will go into a few market opportunities and export services, and I'm very glad to present Filippa Malmegård from the Swedish Institute, Anna Maria Delia from the Swedish National Board of Trade, and Ludmila Lemrini from the Swedish-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, who will present briefly about their organizations and about the opportunities that exist within the Swedish markets. Followed by that, there will also be a short Q&A session. And you will be able to post your questions in the chat forum throughout the session. After that, we will go into a brief overview about some legal considerations, which is from one of our partners, DLA Piper. And last but not least, we will have a panel discussion around some do's and don'ts when fundraising as an early stage startup. We'll be joined by Magali Roy Bentley from Norrsjön Accelerator, Hannah Wheatley from Acumen Fund, and Per Hedberg from the Sting Accelerator. So the Seeds of Bravery program is a 20 million project funded by the European Union under the European Innovation Council to support Ukrainian tech startups to bring them closer to the EU. So the mission of the project is to foster diversity, promote the deep tech industry, and stimulate hundreds of Ukrainian-based innovations benefiting end users in Europe and Ukraine, connecting corporates and governments to the benefit of SMEs and individual customers. So the program is orchestrated by a consortium comprising 17 organizations and 2 associated partners. And it ranges from academic institutions and industry leaders, and the program is divided up in different projects. So the Seeds of Bravery project will allocate 12 million euros in non-refundable grants, and it has a few different streams that it follows. So the applications will follow the 5 different programs, which includes innovation services for improving business models and growth strategies. It's up to 10K each for these applications. It also has an entrepreneurship stream for business continuity and establishing women-led businesses. It also has a Rebuild Ukraine, which includes supporting innovative products and services aimed at post-war construction. And it also has a deep tech scale-up and a deep tech incubation focusing on MVP development and scale-up of prototypes and MVPs. In addition to these grant funding services, it also includes matchmaking with investors, female entrepreneurship and leadership programs, market discovery and fast track programs, just as the days that we're introducing today. So just briefly about Impact Hub Stockholm. We are part of a global network of impact hubs, which is one of the biggest impact networks around the world. We have some 4,000 members. We reach about 150 million as a global organization with impact hubs in 55 countries. And we run 460 programs similar to this a year. And we focus solely on supporting environmental and social conscious entrepreneurship and startups. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker from the Swedish Institute. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will let Filippa take over.
Thank you, Henrik. I am just seeing how to do this in a good way. One moment. Let me see. What do you now see? Do you see notes and screen, or?
We just see your presentation, so it all looks good.
That's great. Happy to hear. As you all know, there's always some worries around the technology, or maybe you are all very savvy in this, of course. But I hope everything will work out. My video was not working, but hello and welcome. I'm very honored to be here today to give you this first little slice of Sweden to share with you. My name is Filippa, and I work with the Swedish Institute, and we are a public agency working to promote interest and trust in Sweden around the world. Sweden's, let me see. Sweden's innovation and research credentials are pretty widely recognized, but what does it mean in reality? I hope to give you a small slice of this and explain more about our approach to research and business development as a nation. Firstly, a fact: Sweden is large in size but small in population. We are 10 million people, populating a country, the 5th largest in Europe, roughly the same size as California. Our land is covered mostly by forests, and a little bit agriculture, 7%. And of course, aspects like this has influenced how our industry is looking today and what we are good at. Because we are good at quite a few things. Sweden is actually ranked as the 2nd most innovative economy in the Global Innovation Index, and this is a big feat for a small country. So it will be interesting to showcase some examples of what we believe is the reasons for this. Our most important industries is vehicles, machines, pharmaceuticals, electronics, minerals, wood products, energy, foods, shoes, and clothes. Some of these, of course, are more R&D heavy, and some are more modern business, so to speak. But how did we become a global hub for research innovations, and also these days for entrepreneurs? Some of the traces some of these aspects we can trace back to our heritage. Sweden has a proud heritage of entrepreneurship and of ingenuity. Just to give you 4 small examples, maybe some of you have used one of these. This is actually the adjustable spanner. It's attributed to a Swedish inventor who patented this in 1891. His name was Johan Petter Johansson. Maybe more in your everyday, you've been using one of these. This is the modern day zipper, which was developed and improved upon from an original design in the UK. But this was developed by a Swedish inventor called Gideon Sundbeck, who patented it in 1917 with these features of the interlocking teeth and the how they are pulled apart by this slider. So that was a patent that is now over 100 years old. Of course, not active anymore. But another one, a good invention, hope you all agree, is this one. This is the 3-point seatbelt. This was an invention that saves 1 life every 6 minutes, people are estimating. And it was actually developed by an inventor that was working for Volvo in 1959. But Volvo decided that instead of taking the patent themselves, they left the patent open, making it possible to promote safety around the world in a better way, and making it open for all car manufacturers to use. So that was thanks to Nils Bohlin. And I could go on and on about this for a long time, about the woman that invented the walker, that had polio herself and developed this as an aid for herself. Also left it open as an open, instead of taking a patent. This, of course, is not a patent in the same way, but we know many of you have probably visited an IKEA store, which was revolutionizing at the day, reinventing the supply chain for furniture by turning them into flat packs. H&M is another story of democratizing fashion in a way that was unseen previously. And of course, many of you have danced to the tunes of ABBA, maybe streamed the same hits using Spotify. Maybe you have played a session of Minecraft or had who knows, a glass of Oatly milk. And Oatly is an example of an innovation that has been developed as a business from the starting point of research. And on that note, I will now go into some of these aspects in the Swedish system beyond the pure force and creativity of entrepreneurs, aspects in our design of our nation and our system for entrepreneurship and innovation that has promoted the nurture, growth, and impact of many of these companies. So how come this small country in the middle of nowhere has become the second most innovative country in the world? Many, of course, arguments state that we have been lucky to not be involved in conflict for many years, which has allowed us to build in peace. We have also a strong culture of collaboration, of equality, making sure that there's a lot of interaction going on in this community. And sometimes when we summarize this approach to the Swedish approach to innovation and how we try to build a system for innovation, where entrepreneurs, of course, is an important part, we sometimes refer to this quadruple helix, which is like a fancy word to basically talk about collaboration between academia, government, civil society, and industry. But truly, this has been one of the cornerstones of this formula, bringing together all these stakeholders to solve problems together. So around 3% of the GDP in Sweden is spent on R&D, making this like a very important resource for Sweden that can be turned into businesses, because this is spending 3% on R&D is in the top 5 globally. So of course this investment helps in maintaining this position, and of course we have had a long-term emphasis and focus on education, and this has really strengthen this capacity for innovation. And because universities truly play this pivotal role in connecting also commercial entities and enterprise with universities. So the bulk of all this research in Sweden is financed privately, around 70%, from different companies. And this means also that the investments are helping the companies becoming innovators in their fields. The remaining 30% is publicly financed. And of course, civil societies, citizens, entrepreneurs, and NGOs also play a critical part in doing this. And we have, of course, a lot of world-renowned organizations promoting this culture in this civil society of entrepreneurs, including prizes like the Nobel Prize, of course. So we have around 45 universities and universities colleges in Sweden, and this is 5 of them are ranked in the top globally, but many of them also have their own innovation offices, and this has also been seen as an important formula to bring about all these startups and interesting companies with one foot in research and one foot in business. And so we also, these universities attract a lot of international talent, and I think it was last year there was around 42,000 international students, and 42% also of all doctorates in Sweden are of non-Swedish background. And the main areas of research in Sweden is within life science, climate and environmental impact, industrial digitalization, automations, and solutions that contribute to building this green future that is very, very strong focus in Sweden. So, okay, enough maybe about this academic. Why am I talking about the universities when I'm talking about the culture of innovation and the state of entrepreneurship in Sweden? Well, one aspect why this is quite interesting as part of our ecosystem is that we have something called access privilege. This sets the Swedish university ecosystem apart. We are one of only a few countries that keep this this professor privilege, and we are the only European nation to still have retained this. And so there have been debates on the value of this privilege. So many of countries have shifted away from the model. But what is it, and why is it important? The professor's privilege is the right for academics to fully own the IP of their research and their inventions and patents that are shaped within their research. Of course, how to share it between the academics and the university environments is, of course, an aspect that's very complicated these days. And it's an issue within the academic environment. So the IP rights in themselves cannot is not an explanation or a sole driver of innovative success. Of course, it must be paired with the wider structure of enabling activities. That's why there's been a lot of focus around the universities on finding pathways to commercializing also these innovations, but also really building pathways for these researchers and professors to develop new businesses based on their research. And of course, one of the most famous Swedish innovations of all time has also led to this foundation that recognizing world-changing achievements. So when Nobel invented dynamite, of course, he did not envisage the negative uses that others would apply to this. And of course, this stressed him out. But it also led him to want to create a legacy that could have this profound impact on research and innovation. So as we all know, the Nobel Prize is like this ultimate accolade for achievement. And we are very proud in Sweden to continue this legacy of representing civil society in this Helix model. As an early adopter nation, Sweden have also quickly grown this reputation as a great testing ground. We have high levels of digitalization and this ecosystem that welcomes collaboration and encourages it. So we are very lucky to develop a lot of these test facilities. Like in the picture here, you might not see it so well, but it's a national synchrotron laboratory offering beamlines that can provide this very modern X-ray spectroscopy. Don't ask me what it all means, but basically it's extremely advanced test facilities, meaning that there's a lot of advantages, of course, that is connected to being close to this university environment, also for startups that are sort of coming out of this environment. But we're also another university in Linköping will soon welcome one of the world's fastest supercomputers, which can power applications within this wide range of areas, from designing new medicines to finding new materials that can fight climate change and so on. So, but beyond all of this fancy infrastructure and testing equipment, of course, maybe you know, or maybe we believe you know, that Sweden, we have a very strong tradition of collaborating, and in Sweden, this culture of collaboration and innovation very much goes hand in hand. So what does this look like in practice? If we analyze the situation, there's maybe not a one-size-fits-all approach to this. There's many different approaches, depending on what industries you are working with and what type of challenges you are tackling. But we have a very strong culture around incubating new ventures that intersect with different industries, including life science, sustainability, and technology. So across the country, we have this tradition of incubating new ventures. And this is, we believe, part of a formula why we rank very highly for patents per capita. And we are number 9 in absolute numbers. Only California is stronger than Sweden in the patents per capita, and also looking at the size of our country. So this means that it's not just the traditional universities and academic institutions that kind of hold the key to innovative success. We have this national network of Swedish incubators and science park, which offers this dynamic and stimulating environments across Sweden for entrepreneurs, companies, and investors to exchange knowledge, ideas, creativity, and innovation. all with the goal of nurturing the development of these ventures, of course. And these environments are normally open also to external entrepreneurs. The formula for these environments are different from hub to hub, but many of them have exchange with the international community of entrepreneurs and welcome companies from other countries. So this is just one example of the infrastructure in which you can find different ways to join, so to speak. We have around 30 science park and 31 incubators at this point, and many of them are ranking very highly in international comparison. But we can also, like, one really important aspect is that I mentioned it, that the 70% of research in Sweden is funded by Swedish industries. Maybe this number is an indication of the role that industry really plays in Sweden's ecosystem for new business and for innovation. So finding business ideas that tap into our ecosystem and our industry is a strong formula for success, if you find ways to be part of the fringe of this ecosystem. And they are funding a lot of this research initiatives and also investing in startups. Many of them have their own startup labs and functions that are only scouting and looking for new investments that are relating sort of to their areas. All of this, of course, these big companies, the industry want to keep their innovative edge, but of course they also realize they cannot do it all themselves. And the intersection between academia and industry is also met by society, where a lot of these companies also want to promote new initiatives and engage in new solutions. So through this approach and all the ideas of collaboration, the companies really want to attract stakeholders across the value chain to participate both in research but also in creating value in different ways, to develop cutting-edge solutions and be innovative together. But of course, as you all represent startups and the startup world, and also wanted some notes of encouragement that big companies are not the only ones who are part of the landscape here in Sweden and that can really get ahead. In many cases, there are companies that are kind of connected to academia or in other ways to society, right? So for example, companies like Oatly. I don't know. I shared some small picture of it, and even Spotify are companies that were once very small. They were connected to academia, but they later kind of spun out of that and move on to global commercial success. And pictured here is also some ocean energy innovations that I will not go into further, but there are many great examples of also smaller companies that spin out only to move on to have big success. But as we all know, we also live in this time where research, innovation, and commercializing solutions simply isn't enough. So to meet all the critical goals by the Paris Agreement, of course, we must make also new innovations that not only cut emissions, but also build societies that are fair and just. And Sweden's own goals is to be the first fossil fuel welfare state by 2045. And of course, this is being accelerated by a really unprecedented investment and commitment by the industry and wider stakeholders to across public and private sectors to achieve this, which means that the market is really ripe for new solutions that help address these different aspects. There's a very, very strong appetite for these type of initiatives that help promote the green transition. And of course, using renewable resources is a key trend, but it's only one part of the puzzle. We, of course, need to invent new green materials, but also transform industries to reduce overall emissions. And of course, we need to innovate, we need to collaborate, but there's also, of course, a lot of need for financing. So that's where investors, like you will talk to later today, or I heard you were there was a investor block in this afternoon. They will of course share many good examples on how to get access to this financing. But we have a very vibrant ecosystem offering a lot of funding opportunities here. And pictured here, you see, among other things, the Swedish company Semvision that have been the first to create a green alternative to traditional cement. So maybe you will hear more about them later. I know they are connected to Norrsken. But from this more traditional industry to revolutionizing, of course, there's a lot of efforts in AI at the moment. There's a massive private initiative that is really amazing, from a national initiative for AI-based research, my apologies, that is really trying to position Sweden as world leading in AI. I will not go into details, but it's just to show that there's a lot of appetite for this, a lot of action going on. And right now, of course, there's also a lot of space industry going on in northern Sweden with a lot of big investments and employing around 12,000 people today, but potentially also growing in the future. So that means that there's a lot of R&D in the space and the adjacent industries going on at the moment. Last but not least, for a nation that's relatively small population, we are really punching above our weight for producing unicorns. There seems to be something in our ecosystem that has been very strong for the nurture of growing companies. So we are second only to Silicon Valley in producing this unicorn per capita. So we are very happy to say that Sweden is a breeding ground for success. So just some numbers here. We have produced more than 40 unicorns in Sweden. So startups with a valuation over $1 billion. And we are ranked very highly in these aspects. Also thanks, of course, to the good investor network here. So we hope that the impact of these unicorns radiates across sectors and around the globe, but we also, of course, hope to be the breeding ground for new unicorns, and it would be very exciting to see if some of them will be coming from you guys. So very happy to be able to share some of these aspects of the Swedish system with you, and look forward to following the journey and to seeing what will become of this great initiative. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Filippa. And that's the Swedish word for thank you there, tack. So before we move over to Anna-Maria, I just wanted to highlight that if you have any questions for our guest speakers, please just add them Q&A in the chat function, and we will try to answer them at the end of this session. So Anna-Maria, I will hand over to you to hear a little bit what the National Board of Trade is doing.
Thank you very much, Henrik. Let's do the same exercise with sharing the screen, and hopefully the presentation pop up. Let's see. I hope you can see now the presentation.
Perfect. We see it very
just let me know. You see the next slide as well.
Yes.
Yes, that's great. Okay, but thank you very much once again, and very nice, and thank you very much for the invitation to be part of the webinar today. Very nice to see a couple of familiar names in the participation in the list of participants. And as Henrik said, my name is Anna-Maria De Leo. I work as a project manager at the National Board of Trade, which is a Swedish agency in charge of international trade and trade policy. I'm going to give you a very brief presentation about the agency and how we support IT companies. And about a little bit of information about the Swedish IT market. And I will conclude with a slide with some of the things that we learned while actually working with companies from Ukraine. But very briefly about our agency, as said, we work with international trade and trade policy. And as you can see on this slide, a quite important part actually nowadays of our activities is related to development cooperation. That means that we support selected developing countries to both to work in a better way with their own trade policy. So we work with ministries and improve the capacity of the ministries to work with the trade policy. At the same time, we work with the exporters in these countries and help them to come to enter the Swedish market or the European market. And I am part of a very small group called Open Trade Gate Sweden. And our mandate is very much related to supporting exporters in developing countries to enter the Swedish and the EU market. And we are funded by development aid. So this is public money. And one of the advantages is that everything we do for the exporters in developing countries is free of charge. And what we do in practice is that we have a point of contact where the exporters can contact us and ask different questions related to Sweden. It could be related to the Swedish market, or what agency is in charge of what, or what kind of rules and regulations their product needs to meet in order to be exported to the Swedish market. At the same time, more and more of our activities are actually focusing on building capacity for exporters in developing countries to actually make business in the Swedish market. And this is what we are going to focus a little bit in the coming slides. We work with mostly with food, textile, and IT. So only 3 sectors. And when it comes to IT, which is relevant for you, we work with both startups within the tech sector, but also with more established companies. And the support that we provide, first of all, we work only with Ukraine and Moldova, and we are very focused on these 2 countries. They are highly prioritized by the Swedish government. And we see a lot of opportunities actually in strengthening the business and making some kind of bridge between Sweden and the tech companies in Sweden and in these countries. We run a long-term program. Right now we run it with Moldova. We hope that we will run the same kind of program with Ukraine within short. So far, we worked with Ukraine a lot on an activity basis. So part of this program we actually did with Ukraine as well. Our program is very hands-on and customized. You will see it in the next slide why I say that. And the main objective is that before the end of the program, each company that will stay in the program will actually have at least landed at least one business, one customer in Sweden. And the way we created this program is actually based on our experience of working with companies in developing countries and their challenges when addressing the Swedish market. And probably the biggest challenge is that nobody knows you. And as you heard a little bit from Filippa as well, trust is one of those things that is so much needed in order to do business in Sweden. So if nobody knows you, then you will need to invest in getting to be known in the market, and that takes both time and of course resources. Then the customer needs and the expectations are quite different. And when I say that is that, for example, companies in Ukraine and Moldova, they work. Oh, sorry, I think you hear something in the background, which is. we have a small dog here. So the customer needs are quite different, and in our experience, the companies in Moldova and in Ukraine and in Moldova, they have a lot of partnerships and business with companies from US and UK, for example. But that could be quite difficult, different compared to the strategies that you need to have to address the Swedish market. Competition is a little bit different here, and it's different than in other markets, and that could require that you need to actually adapt your sales methods, and you really need to sell. Limited resources and time is also one of those resources that is limited. And when we put this all together, ended up with an approach which is a gradual one. We start with a phase when the companies get to know the Swedish market. Then we have a hands-on approach where we work structured around the market plan, and then we try to implement it. And as said, the whole point is to do business. And in our approach, there is a lot of coaching included in the program. And the matchmaking comes in the second part of the program, because you really need to learn the market before coming to this stage. In between there are a lot of activities related to the market, more like coming to Sweden, meeting companies, taking place in different kind of conferences or exhibitions and so on, in order to create that understanding of how the market works and how the companies needs to be approached. I will stop about our program. We hope to launch this approach for Ukraine this fall. And I promise to say a couple of words about the Swedish market. We don't have so much time right now, but just to get a picture, we have about 1.2 million companies in the Swedish market. But most of them are small companies, and this is the normal situation in all the economies. As you can see, we have roughly about a little bit over 1,000 companies, which are really, really large. So SMEs is the backbone of the Swedish economy, and a lot of them work actually within the tech sector in one way or another. We touched on, you saw already at in Filippa's presentation some names that are known. We have strong clusters within these industries, and I can imagine that you recognize at least some of these companies. You can see even Northvolt there, which is part of the green transition, for example. The Radar Insights has very good market information about the IT sector, and they do research the Swedish market. And in the last report from last year, a new one just came out yesterday, so we didn't manage to update the data. But as you can see, the tech companies in Sweden, the areas where they are putting a lot of effort is into the digitalization, but also security is an issue that is really prioritized. And seeing from another perspective, from the prioritization, this says about the same thing. Automatization and digitalization and security are areas that are prioritized by the Swedish companies. Of course, this gives a lot of business opportunities if you're working in these areas. And one of the issues that is very hot on this market, but it's also problematic. There is a big gap challenge that the market needs to address. Tech Sweden is one of the branch organizations where the tech companies are members. And in their report from the beginning of the year, they stressed that there is this need of 80,000 new IT specialists every year. And our universities do make a lot of specialists, but we are not up to that level. And the competencies that are really missing are the ones that you can that are shown in this slide. The most important is to keep in mind that it's mostly like senior, so specialists with a lot of experience that are really in demand. As you can see, maybe even in the developers and the security side, there is a need, and IT architects as well. Comes to the areas which are really in high demand right now: digital transformation, cybersecurity, AI, and cloud computing. If you have products or services in this area, the Swedish market could be a good, an interesting place to look. From our experience, now we have been working with companies, with IT companies from both Moldova and Ukraine for a while. We have in our groups mostly maybe general software development companies. And what we realize is that the Swedish market is really, the Swedish customers are more preferring to buy packaged IT products or services. And this is because the risk is actually lower. You have already a solution that is tested, that works, that functions, and so on. When it comes to selling more general software development services, in this business, it's needed a lot of trust between the customer and the provider. And in order to build that trust, you need to put a lot of effort. It takes time, and it a little bit depends on the situation. And what is the most important thing in this is that it's very important with good and clear user cases to be able to convince the Swedish companies to partner in order to work with software development. So there are two choices there, depending a little bit on your profile. You heard a little bit from Filippa about the business culture, but this really it's good to stress again, because part of the system, the ecosystem here, you need to understand the market that you are coming in, and the teamwork is the leading word. This creates a lot of innovation. Swedes are team players, and in order for a team to work, you need to have that trust, and building trust goes again to it takes time. This is why our recommendation in the beginning, and this is why we decided to have such a long support program, because we need to give the chance for the companies to build these relations unless they have them from before. And another thing that it's extremely important is the communication. And here we communicate so differently from one country to another. I can notice a big difference in the way the Eastern Europe communicates compared maybe to, for example, what it works here in the Swedish market. And this is one of the areas that any company needs to pay a lot of attention when coming into the Swedish market, and to learn the customers and how you can address it and how you can communicate in an efficient way. Then we are informal, polite, and egalitarian. This works also with goes well hand in hand with the teamwork, and it's part of the way that we actually cooperate with each other and develop solutions. be informal. That's one of the things that I usually advise the companies, and dare to be informal compared to the maybe the Eastern Europe where more formal works. And that gives us also the power to come and take initiative and promote new projects and so on. And then we are also open and transparent, and we are expecting the same from our business partners. All this culture creates a lot of loyalty, and this is where you need to find a way to come into a system that is quite well routinated and with a lot of strong relations, but it's not impossible to come in. You just need to have the right kind of strategy. And punctuality is one of those things that everybody talks when it comes to Swedes. Don't be late to the meeting, or at least say that you will be late. And I promised a couple of learnings from our experience so far. And what we realize is that there is incredibly a lot of experience, for example, in the Ukrainian companies. They are very broad. They do have experience in a lot of areas. But if you want to address effectively the Swedish market, then you need to find the focus. Don't go and say that you can do everything, because that will not be very successful. That will not create the trust. So you need to find your niche, and you need to stick with it and really try it. Then you will need to do your homework. Sometimes it's good to have a plan, stick with it, and focus, keep the focus, because addressing a lot of markets at the same time might mean in practice that you don't use the resources in the right way. So take the decision, make a plan, and then invest in building relations. Don't try to sell from the first meeting. This is one of the things that I notice that is done usually. And our advice is that get to know the person that you are talking with, because the business is done between people. And when we know each other, it's much easier to come to start a selling pitch later on. Think long term. It's another thing that it's really needed when addressing the Swedish market, because Swedes are long term. It might take a little bit of time to start, but once you land a partnership with a Swedish company, that is long term. Swedes don't really like to change a lot. And this is why it takes a while before they find that trust and they feel like, yes, now I'm taking the best decision. I think this is very different in other markets, and I know that. And then, since it takes a lot of time, don't give up. Try your plan, adjust it, come back, but don't give up the market too early, because it takes a while before you get it. And of course, go and get a little bit of support. There are many projects and programs that can help you. There are additional resources that you can find on our website. We have 2 studies, one on IT services and one on fintech. We will publish a third one on gaming industry this autumn, and we will update the studies that we already have. So you can find information with us. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and of course, pose your questions in the chat. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anna Maria. Very interesting to hear about your learnings as well. And as I saw someone post a question before, we will share the presentations afterwards. You'll get the links through those as well. So thank you so much. I think we will head over to Ludmila to hear from the Swedish-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. And we will do the same exercise now, sharing the screen.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Ludmila Limrini. I present Swedish-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce in Scandinavia. We are a business communication platform, and we build bridge between Ukrainian and Swedish company, develop collaboration and cooperation. I would like to talk a little bit about Swedish traveling IT tech sector in Sweden. Our speakers already talked a lot about opportunities, about how it's attractive Sweden to develop startups, especially in tech sector. So a little bit we just want to show you what it means Swedish ecosystem. Sweden's IT and tech sector is known for its innovative and collaborative ecosystem with a strong emphasis on R&D and highly skilled workforce. Global influence. Swedish tech companies have a global reach with many industry-leading products and services that are in high demand worldwide. Startup friendly. Sweden is an attractive destination for tech startups, offering supportive infrastructure, access to capital, and business-friendly environment. Key findings from market studies. I would like to say to you, you cannot tell everything about tech market in Sweden, but the most important sectors we can now discuss about this. Emerging sectors, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and sustainable technology are identified as high-growing areas with significant potential. Talent pool. Sweden's tech talent pool is deep and diverse with a strong emphasis of STEAM education and cultural of innovation. Investment opportunities. The Swedish venture capital ecosystem is robust, providing ample funding opportunities for promising Ukrainian tech startups. Opportunities for Ukrainian company. About opportunities, I would like also to focus of market access. Market access is partnering with Swedish tech companies can provide Ukrainian firms with valuable access to Europe and global market. In this issue, I would like to recommend Ukrainian startups to spend time and look for Swedish partner to enter Swedish market and develop your startups. Knowledge sharing. Collaboration can foster the exchange of technical expertise, industry insights, and the best practice between the two countries. So if you find, for example, some communication and or Swedish partner, you can exchange experience, not only study, because in Ukraine, it's also IT sector, it's very strong. Talent attraction. Sweden's highly skilled workforce and advanced rich capabilities can be leveraged to strengthen Ukrainian tech companies. Challenges and consideration. Anna Maria already talked about business cultural and difference. So cultural difference is very important. And like Chamber of Commerce, we work in this case already 6 years, and we understand how we did it different and what kind of gaps we have before we start to develop relationship. I would pay attention about trust. As Anna Maria said, it's very important in Sweden, and you have to invest like Ukrainian startup time to develop this relationship and to be known in Swedish market. So cultural difference is navigated the nuance of Swedish and Ukrainian business cultural with require adaptability and open communication. Regulatory environments, we have different between Ukraine and Sweden. So if we want to enter market and we want to develop startup in Sweden, so we have to understand and complying with the legal and regulatory frameworks in both countries is crucial of successful partnership. And of course, even now in this time, but I hope it's already less and less, we have language barriers. There are many talent Ukrainian startups. They create a lot of good initiative, but the language barrier don't give to enter European market, especially Swedish market. So effective communication and collaboration may necessitate language training and interpretation service. Navigation, the Swedish tech market. We already talked about market overview, and I would like to pay attention about industry changes. Sweden is renowned for its robust tech ecosystem with strong sector in tech, gambling, telecommunication, and green tech. Also medtech and other one sector of economy. Innovation hub. Stockholm is considering a leading innovation hub, often referred to as the Silicon Valley of Europe due to its high number of incomes per capita. Government support. The Swedish government actively support tech innovation through grants, subsidies, and favorable policy. As you know, I see some participation. They already know about Swedish Institute calls, and there are many initiatives from Swedish government to support how develop Ukrainian startups in tech sector. There are many business angel venture organization. For example, I would like to call name this Nordzone, Creandum, Connect, found by me, and other many other organizations who can support tech innovation for Ukrainian startups. About key players, we already a little bit talk, and presentation from Swedish Institute show you very good picture how is grow and how is fast grow sometimes startup in Sweden, with all supporting include university, innovations hub, and many other one expertise. Regulatory environment. Business regulation. Sweden offers an transparent and efficient regulatory environment. However, compliance with European Union regulation, especially regarding data protection, GDPR, is crucial. Intellectual property. This is very important issue, and this is very big difference between Ukraine and Sweden. In Sweden, everything is secure and safe if you register, and you get a strong protection to register your intellectual property. Strong intellectual property protection laws safeguard innovation crucial to tech companies relate of proprietary technology. It's very important issue. Collaboration potential between Sweden and Ukraine. what we are doing. Strategic partnership. Mutually beneficial partnerships can leverage and strengthen and expertise for both Sweden and Ukraine. Joint innovation. This is what we are support and what we want to develop to combining Sweden's technological prowess and Ukrainian software engineering talents can spur new breakthroughs. Business expansion. Expansion into each other's market can drive growing and open up new avenues for success. About successful story, you already heard about Spotify. Spotify has connection with Ukraine, entered the Ukrainian market in 2020, offering localized connect and user experience, collaborate with local artists to promote Ukrainian music on a global platform, engaged in community initiative to support the Ukrainian, establish a research and development center in Ukraine, tapping into the country's talented engineers pool. Klarna. This is also very famous Swedish startup and connection with Ukraine. Facilities seamless online shopping experience for Ukrainian customers through BNPL services, partners with Ukrainian e-commerce platforms to extend payment solution, supports the local field tech ecosystem by sharing expertise and best practice. Right. This is also startup, and they also connect with Ukraine and exploring opportunities to collaborate with Ukrainian logistic companies. Potential to introduce sustainable freight solution in Ukraine, reducing carbon emission. Engagement with Ukrainian tech talent for R&D and innovation and autonomous driving technologies. Connecting with Ukrainian Chamber, Swedish Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, and what we can do. Gain valuable insight into the Swedish Ukrainian IT tech sector through the Chamber's research and analysis. So if you need some information, for example, about Science Park, about innovation, about foundation, business angel, so we can inform you, and we can send, for example, a list of all of these organizations. For example, Science Park in Sweden, there are 140. So you can find many opportunities to connect with few and to find solution how you can develop your startup. How you can find, for example, in this Science Park, some companies, Swedish company, Swedish startup with you can collaborate and develop the same, for example, ID. We can propose also networking opportunity, connect with Swedish and Ukrainian companies, industry leaders, and potential partners in the Chamber's events. So what I mean, for example, this autumn we will plan to do Innovation Day, and we would like to see Ukrainian companies, especially startups, to make some brief and present their idea for business angel and some Swedish investors. Business support. Receive guidance of navigated the Ukrainian market from legal and regulatory requirements to cultural consideration. So as we talk about business culture, we have a lot of experience, and we can teach and we can explain how you can work with Swedish market, how you can enter this market, and how you can communicate in a right way, what you shall do step by step. If we talk about regulatory, so we can send you information what you need, for example, to register your intellectual property or get some patent, so you can touch us. You're always welcome in this issue. So Swedish-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce is eager to employing the best opportunities in Ukrainian steering IT tech sector, leverage our market insight, networking platforms, and business support through our company. Contact us today to unlock the potential on this dynamic market. Thank you for your attention. This is our contact. If you have some question, you can touch us by email, and you can see about our events if you see information in our site. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ludmila, for a very good overview, and thank you, Filippa and Maria as well. So that was a few sessions on export opportunities and way to enter the Swedish markets. I'm wondering now if there are any questions from the audience. Otherwise, I have a few questions to maybe hear a little bit more about the practical advice. But let's just see if there are any questions from the audience now. Maybe people are a bit shy. A lot of information to take in. But I think it would be, I mean, all of you mentioned these large businesses that exist in Sweden, and a few of you also touched upon the ways that they've actually collaborated with Ukrainian companies. And I'm just wondering, have you seen any success factors in how perhaps smaller startups or in general just Ukrainian companies have actually connected with these Swedish companies that you mentioned? Do they go about it in cold emails or reaching out like this, or does it require you to actually get physically to Sweden and attend different networking events and so forth? Do any of you want to answer that question?
I don't know if Ludmila maybe wants to, since she had the examples. Otherwise, I can tell a little bit from our perspective.
Yeah,
but Ludmila first, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Anna Maria. As said already, we plan to make Innovation Day in October this autumn, and of course we would like to invite physically Ukrainian startups and make brief and presentation of their startup ideas. So if someone interested, of course they can touch us by email, and we can deal with our program, and we can choose what kind of startups we can present for Swedish potential business angel.
I could add a little bit from our experience. I think cold emailing doesn't really work at all, especially if you don't know what to write in it. I mean, think about ourselves as well. I mean, we receive so many emails. You really need a lot of time to open everything. And the issue that we got in the beginning from our companies was that I'm sending, so I really had one company, not from Ukraine, from Moldova. They send out 10,000 emails in Sweden. And he didn't really get anything out of it. And we realized that, okay, but this doesn't really work, because first of all, if you address a Swedish company, it needs to be customized in some way. This is why I said do your homework, because you need to know to whom you write to start to establish a relation. So our advice is that you need to come here and invest in order to meet people. And then after the first contact, it's easier to follow up by email and come a little bit later, follow up again. The contacts, it's not like everybody needs to wait 2 years to land a deal. It's more like it depends a little bit on the ability of and the interest of both parties in cultivating a relation. But it doesn't really work only online, I would say. It requires a little bit of physical meetings as well.
Why we would like to make innovation take physically? Because people have to communicate and have to feel each other, and they have to show themselves. As you say, you cannot sell, and you don't need to sell from the first time your service or your production. So you just have to understand. Present yourself, who you are, what are you doing, and then you can have a right connection and stable communication. And after that, of course, after physical meeting, you can organize already online meeting. After physical meeting, work very good. Next online and online meeting. So I totally agree with you, Anna Maria. So if you want to enter market or you want to develop your startups, you have to invest your time to visit a few times Sweden, and you have to follow all schedule of special fairs and events. For example, in your topic, not only in your topic, just to understand how it works with this system, to integrate in Swedish society, and understand rules, how you can promote your business idea and what kind of partner you have to look for. From the one times you cannot do it. You have to do it. You have to search few times to visit Sweden.
I fully agree, and I would say one more thing. Add one more thing, and I think maybe Ludmila, you could agree with me. But I'm coming also from Eastern Europe, and I think in Eastern Europe we have a little bit of this. We are very much centered on ourselves. So when we start to talk about ourselves. I would say that in Sweden, it's very much appreciated the fact that you can listen. So be curious, ask your partner to share information, because people are really glad to share information, to share advice, to share insights. So try to change a little bit the focus. Yes, of course, it depends a little bit how the conversation goes. If you get a lot of questions, you need to answer them. But the other way around should also work. And I think this would give you the chance to create a quick relation if you are interested in your partner that you discuss with. That would be another thing for me. We feel something like this, because you also have a lot of experience.
No, I think you have offered a lot of. We are a bit more direct in our promotion and wanting to build these collaborations. But of course, I can share a link in the chat with the opportunities also from the Swedish Institute in these domains and information available. And then I saw also a question in the chat around prop tech.
Yeah.
And of course, like we are all now gatekeepers to the Swedish market. We can, of course, Google easy things like this, and we're happy. I think I was starting to Googling prop tech events now just to be able to post it in the link. So I was a bit, but will be very exciting to hear. And of course, all of you now you need to enter these different industries and different branches, and of course those all have different realities. Personally, I used to work in the property business, so I know a bit about prop tech, and I know it's of course quite traditional industry. So if you compare that to gaming, of course those are very different industries. But of course the Swedes we are all quite similar in how we are. So I can only echo all the good tips that you have offered already. So I think a good idea is to join seminars, events, all these type of things that gives you these kind of more informal surfaces, because Swedes are shy people, so we need to warm up to new people before we can trust them. So see what type of events that are happening in Sweden relating to your industries and kind of those type of things. There's a lot of stuff going on online these days also. So I think probably there are maybe these industry small overviews. I don't know, Anna Maria, what your experience is from if how you attack different kind of sectors within IT.
Regarding the PropTech, we organize a small gathering with PropTech Sweden. So with that organization, I can try to put you in contact with Alexandra, I think it was.
Yeah, so
if she contacts me, I can put her in contact with the guys from PropTech Sweden. That's a small organization having about 100 companies in this industry, and I think that they could help you with events as well. I would say so. And then about Filippa's question, how to for the time being, we work quite a lot with software development companies. So what we are doing, we are helping to build user cases and focus to be able to start to contact Swedish companies and try to sell them. But we actually manage, especially with Moldavians, since we work a little bit more long term with them, to make them choose, actually. And that is a big success, I believe.
Very happy to hear that. We also have another question from Anatoly regarding a health tech startup. So Anatoly is working for a health tech startup. We're using blood test results, recommendations. So the question is, where would you recommend starting to look for partners in medical laboratories / clinics that can draw blood for analysis?
Karolinska Innovation Center.
Karolinska Innovation Center. That's the magic word.
Yeah. Everything about medtech, I think this is the ones of biggest innovation center, innovation lab, and Elekta company, Elekta Group also. They have in develop the same name with our Ukrainian IT companies also. So I think to touch those organization, it can be productive for this startup.
Perfect. We have Elekta and Karolinska here. I just sent
Elekta and Karolinska Innovation Center.
Yes. Thank you.
And I will also host a link in the chat, because the Swedish Institute, we also have a type of funding that is not related to the startup itself, but to promote collaboration between Swedish partners and the companies and organizations in among other countries in Ukraine. So the idea of this small funding is just to promote the collaboration in order to get that happening, because we know that as entrepreneurs, you're also busy doing so many things. So sometimes you need a little nudge to also get help with establishing a partnership and maybe funding travel and all these things that is non-related to business. So I'll post a link in the chat, and maybe it's relevant to one or two of you at least.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Anything from you, Anna Maria, regarding research laboratories?
I would say that the university having medical education, they also have. I would start there actually. I think Karolinska is good, but it's huge. It's very. I mean, there could be opportunities in smaller places in Sweden. So, for example, for the autumn, we are looking actually to go outside Stockholm, because Stockholm is huge, but it could be a little bit too much in the beginning. You want to go into a smaller place, and they are really good. Areas. I mean, like Umeå, for example, has a lot of medical studies. Check those ones. I don't have already a list, but we could put it together if it's needed, of course.
Thank you so much. And while we were talking about connecting the right people in order to actually entering the market and so forth, have you noticed that local representation is necessary, or is it possible to simply visit Sweden every now and then? Or would you require sort of subsidiary locally?
This question I get quite a lot, actually, and it's tricky because it very much depends of the relation that you have with your partner in Sweden. I mean, think about it. If it's just an agent who is supposed to represent and sell your services or your product, if it's not really tied to your company, the result might not be so satisfactory, actually. I know a lot of people working within this industry that Swedes that they actually avoid taking this kind of assignments because it's like nobody can sell better than you. And especially when you are a startup and believe in something, I think it's probably the best way to go forward could be actually, and it's a win-win because applying for different kind of projects that would support you to actually come into the market would give you also a lot of, would help you improve your skills to address this market, and you can apply those skills in other markets as well. So it's more like a win-win. But I wouldn't say that having an agent, for example, would be the solution. Having a real partner who believes in your solution and is really, you know, like wanting to promote it, that is something else. But I think that that is also a matter of trust and find the right person. So you still need to come here and visit the country.
So you have to come visit. Summer is a good time, I think. Thank you so much for that. Filippa or Ludmila, anything you want to add to this question of local representation?
No.
Great. So are there any other questions from the attendees in the chat? If not, I think that we can thank Ludmila, Filippa, and Anna-Maria. And as we said before, we will share the contacts afterwards to all these exciting programs that can support your export journey. And I think we have Felicia from DLA Piper with us. So in this next session, we will go in a little bit to some legal considerations. So we will hear from DLA Piper about some important considerations when operating in Sweden. Felicia or Julia, are you with us? And do you want to share your screen?
Hi, everybody. We're here. We will share our screen within a few minutes. Can you hear us?
Yes. Are you ready to get started, or should we continue the discussion of
we can start in 5 minutes, maybe.
Okay, I understand. Then maybe we can just see if there are, if Filippa and Anna-Maria or Ludmila is still there, then maybe I can just ask a few more questions, export opportunities in the meantime. Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Perfect. No, so I was just wondering if you've seen any specific products that come out of Ukraine, where Swedish companies are currently highly intrigued about these, or if there are any specific sectors where you see that big Swedish companies are looking elsewhere than in the Swedish market right now. It can be products or services.
But just the general takeaway is just the creativity and ingenuity and being strong in software development.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there is like still a job to be done in sharing more of these stories, so we get more new top of mind. But I think in general it's just such a strong reputation in software development. So I think that's where there's truly like a strong appetite to. And as we have pointed out, there's also this big need, the talent gap, and of course, finding this great talent in Ukraine is of course fantastic. But But I'm really excited also to see if and how the Swedish ecosystem can also nurture and help grow the startups themselves. Not only bring talent to Swedish companies, but truly, you know, find ways to hook into the ecosystem with your own startup. So I know there's a lot of effort being put into that aspect of how to keep your startup still hook into the ecosystem. So I think a lot of great initiatives are being done. So it's been really exciting to hear about Anna Maria's work and also from Ludmila, everything that's going on.
Yeah. And Anna Maria, you mentioned the packaging, the software solutions. Is that something you've seen in particular sectors relating to automation or artificial intelligence or any of these other?
We know that for example, in fintech, it's really needed to be like that in most of the cases. But it's understandable. It's a very sensitive sector. So there it's really we've seen that.
And do you see that fintech companies, are they looking for solutions outside of Sweden a lot because they can't find it here?
I can't say that. Maybe it's good to add that we work a lot with Swedish consultants, so people that are actually in the market working on an everyday basis. And our consultant right now is a fintech. It's part of the fintech market as well. But their opinion, because when we work with the companies, their opinion is very much that it works when you have a product. You know, you have the frame. When you buy software development services, you don't really know what you buy. You buy a future promise that it will work, a project it will work. And then, because when you develop something together, you need to get to know each other. We have so different ways of working. The work culture in Sweden is quite different than the work culture in Ukraine. And we need to build the bridge first. So if you start from cold, you don't have any relation with that company, it takes a lot of time to build that relation. But I can say that there are companies that actually landed contracts, small ones, pilot, after the very first time when they came to Sweden. So it's not like it's impossible, but it anyway takes time before you come to a turnaround that is good enough, you know, to start to get your investment back. So I would say that packaged works better because it's easier to promote. It's something that you already know, it works, you can show it, you can demo it, and so on. When it comes to software development, it's a little bit different. This is why I said that our recommendation is like that, and we will look more to have a better mix of companies in the next group, so that we can.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't know if this answers your questions.
I think it does. But you mentioned fintech. Is there any other sector where you've seen the interest for these ready packaged solutions?
We don't have any medtech in the group, but I would guess that there it would work as well. There is a lot of patient. I mean, there are a lot of sensitivities in that sector as well that we need to take into consideration. Everything from GDPR to patients' data and so on. But I would think that in there we could find as well. Not sure about cybersecurity, but I know that we could learn a lot from the Ukrainian experience when it comes to cybersecurity. So there we will try to prioritize it more during the autumn and see how we could help.
So I think that would be quite good words to end this session with then, that we can learn a lot from the Ukrainian experience and the Ukrainian sectors. I will just add again my colleagues from DLA Piper, Felicia or Julia. Are you ready to join?
Hi, everybody. We're
Perfect.
ready to join. I will just try to share my screen here.
Thank you so much. And thank you again to Filippa, Anna Maria, and Ludmila. I will hand over to DLA Piper then, who will give us an overview of a few legal considerations.
So, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, great. Hi, everybody, and
If you
welcome
want to
to.
put it in presentation mode, it's not in presentation mode.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Hold on.
Now we see your notes as well. But maybe if you if you go on the one furthest to the right of the icons down there.
Sorry, guys. So I guess that you can see like the entire like notes thing on the side as well.
Yes.
Just a moment.
No worries. We all had time to practice a bit before on our presentations, so you joined mid-session, so it's absolutely not an issue. Now we see the presentation. So this should work.
Oh, at last, at long last. We're going to visit long term. Yeah. So, sorry for that, and welcome to Doing Business in Sweden, Legal Issues for Startups. My name is Felicia Lindstrand, and I work in the DLA Banking and Finance team. With me here today, I have some colleagues that will talk about corporate, intellectual property, employment, tax, and some other miscellaneous subjects. Here's the entire team. And who are we, and why are we talking about these things? We are a law firm called DLA Piper that works in 40 countries and have around 19 offices all around the world. We talk about everything from corporate to tax. We ask you to kindly save all the questions to the end, where we will have a brief Q&A. But that's about it about us. Let's talk about doing business in Sweden instead. Philip?
Hi, everyone. My name is Philip Andenius, and I work at the corporate department here at DLA Piper Sweden. So I will do a short and brief introduction to the corporate side of doing business in Sweden. And as mentioned, if there are any questions, we can take them after the presentation. As a foreign entity that conducts business in Sweden is required to incorporate either a subsidiary or register a branch office. And accordingly, similar to the concept of establishment, according to EU law, a temporary supply of goods and services in Sweden does not itself trigger the obligation to register a branch or establish a subsidiary. Such circumstances are, for instance, whether the business is conducted in a professional manner, with a certain duration, or at least through a series of business events. Simply put, the activities should not be categorized as a hobby, but rather as a business with a clear profit and no acquisition purpose. Foreign companies establishing a business in Sweden most commonly form subsidiaries in the form of either private or public limited liability company. And a limited liability company is a legal entity and can own property, employ personnel, and enter into agreements. In contrast, the branch is just an extension of the foreign company, and the assets and liability of the branch form part of the foreign company's assets and liabilities. As such, the foreign-based company is financially responsible for the branch. In a limited liability company, the directors of the company generally have no liability for business debts, and the financial risk of the shareholder typically amounts to the capital invested in the company. And the lowest capital investment in a Swedish limited liability company is 25,000 SEK. Another advantage of operating a business through a limited liability company is that you can easily raise capital by issuing new shares. And establishing a subsidiary in Sweden and in the Nordics in general is typically considered to be quite easy in comparison with other European countries. It is relatively fast and cheap, and documents don't need to be notarized, and the company generally doesn't require an operating license. And when establishing a limited liability company in Sweden, there are, generally speaking, two alternatives to choose from. Either you can apply to establish a new limited liability company with the Swedish Company Registration Office, or you can acquire a so-called off-the-shelf company, which is the most time and cost-efficient way. And the purchase price for a shell company itself is dependent on the type of shell company. There are different kinds depending on what share capital you prefer and if it's public or private, but typically it ranges from 7,000 to 15,000 SEK, plus the share capital and a registration fee. And the advantage of acquiring a shelf company is that you can initiate your business as from the date when you register the new board of directors, because you have to, when you buy the shelf company, there is a board that you have to change, and you have to change the articles of association and the name of the company. So when you have registered that, you can initiate the business. And just a few words on the residency requirements. In a Swedish limited liability company, you need to have at least one director. And if there's less than 3 directors, you have to appoint a deputy director. And no fewer than half of the directors of the board must reside within the EEA. And if you appoint deputy directors, the same applies to them. At least half of them need to reside within the EEA. And if none of the directors of the board or the managing director reside within Sweden, one person resident in Sweden must be appointed with the authority to receive service or process on behalf of the company. And that was it from the corporate side.
Thank you very much. I'll take over. My name is Josephine Mannerfelt. I work with the IPT team in DLA Piper Sweden. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having us. So we're going to talk a little bit about intellectual property, but we're not going to be doing too much about trademark and patent, and we're going to focus on copyright and how to protect IP in contracts. So in short, copyright is about the rights of the authors, which is the creators of the intellectual property, to their work and protecting it against unauthorized use by others. And copyright protection is automatic, so there's no need for any registration or other formality in order to obtain copyright protection for a work. And it is not possible either to, on a voluntary basis, to register in Sweden with an authority, for example. The copyright symbol you see there, it has no legal effect in Sweden. It only serves as a reminder that copyright protection may exist. So we're going to move on to IP clauses here and how to protect it. In principle, in Sweden, there is a freedom of contract in the field of intellectual property. As a general starting point, copyright vests with the author, which is an actual person. And then copyright may be freely transferred wholly or partly by means of contract. And just to be clear, it is the so-called economic rights to the work that may be transferred or licensed. And this includes the right to make or not to make the work available, or to sell the work, basically. And in order to protect IP, companies can take necessary contractual measures in relation to employees and third parties. And it is generally advisable to agree on IP issues in advance as far as possible. And in a situation of transfer of IP rights, the decisive factors are whether the contract includes a transfer of the right and the scope of the transfer and the right. So under Swedish copyright law, any part of the copyright which is not specifically transferred in the contract remains with the author. So if an IP clause is unclear in this regard, a restrictive interpretation will in general therefore be made in favor of the author. This means that it is very important to expressly include the rights to modify, transfer, delete, redistribute the work when IP rights are transferred. So this applies to, for example, employment contracts, consultancy agreements, and other commercial contracts. Specifically in employment agreements, note that any IP clause would have to be in line with any applicable collective bargaining agreement that may have specific provisions therein. And for consultancy agreements, now this is an area where we often see some insufficient IP clauses. Note that we find it advisable to ensure the chain of ownership is verified. And what does that mean? Basically, the creator, the author of a copyrighted or protected work is always an actual person, so that is the employee in some sort of form of another. So if the contract is between a consultancy firm and your company, that doesn't necessarily mean that that consultancy firm is the holder of the IP right and has the right to transfer this to you. So you will be looking for some sort of warranty there, for example. Does the consultancy firm promise or warrant that they actually are allowed to transfer this right to you? And so that is something that you should definitely look forward to in a consultancy agreement. And also it's very common that the right to transfer and modify, etc., is not included. So that's also a red flag there. So definitely make sure that the consultancy agreements are including those rights. Specifically for commercial contracts, we see a lot of partnership agreements, pilots, etc., for early startups, which does not include any sort of IP clause. And here we really think that you should think, when you are developing the contract, will any IP be developed in connection with this? What will happen to jointly develop IP? Who will own what? This is something to think about in advance rather than afterwards when having these agreements. And I'm just going to say a few words about computer programs. And this is defined as software code, basically, that's what we're talking about. And also any preparatory design material connected to the computer program, which includes, for example, technical documentation, program specification, and algorithms. So there is a section in the Copyright Act that sets out that the copyright to computer programs developed by an employee, either as developed as a part of the performance or the employee's duties, or on the instructions of the employer, this passes automatically to the employer. So a word of caution here, this provision is barely tested in case law, and the exact scope is not clear. It doesn't really say anything else in the law text or preparatory works, or any case law doesn't really set out any standards on how to determine whether a computer program is in fact developed as part of the performance of the employee's duties. What does that mean, and where does that end? And what kind of instructions? So we recommend here to always back up, not to rely too blindly on this, and back it up with robust IP clauses in the employment agreements. And also remember that this is not applicable to consultants, only employees. And with that, I think this is a perfect segue to go to our employment section, and I will leave the word to Michaela.
Thank you, Josefin. As Josefin said, my name is Michaela Torvald, and I am a part of the employment team here at DLA Piper. So I will now briefly present some general employment law regulations that can be very useful for you to know when starting a business here in Sweden. Initially, we can mention that employees in Sweden enjoy very strong employment protection. And dismissing an employee is generally very challenging due to the regulations of the Swedish Employment Protection Act, the EPA. The EPA requires just cause for termination, distinguishing between personal reasons, like poor performance, and redundancy, which is restructuring, for example. Redundancy is typically considered to be just cause for dismissal, while personal reasons are considered more of a last resort kind of way. An employee can, of course, also be dismissed if they seriously neglect their obligations toward the employer. But to reduce the number of mishires, we instead recommend including a probationary employment in the employment agreement. This probationary employment period can be introduced for a maximum period of 6 months. And during this period, the employer can terminate the employee without any specific reasons by providing 2 weeks of written notice. If neither party terminates during this probationary period, the employment instead becomes permanent. And the employment protection rules applies regardless of employment period, form of employment, and to all employees, except for some exceptions, as mentioned in the PowerPoint. The company's managing director is usually not covered by the EPA. This, however, requires that the MD has managerial employment terms, including, for example, a 6-month period. This also means that you don't have just cause to terminate a managing director. For the MD and other key employees, we also recommend including some customary clauses just to protect yourselves regarding intellectual property rights, like Josephine already mentioned. Also include confidentiality clauses, non-competition clauses, and non-solicitation clauses. However, be aware that you should not make the restrictive clauses too wide and too longly applicable. In that case, they could be considered invalid if they are tried in court. And also a clause regarding intellectual property rights is also very important to include in every employment contract, and also regarding the consultant. And in the EPA, there's a lot of information on what has to be included in an employment contract, and you can see some examples in the presentation. And other things to just keep in mind is that it's very usual for companies in Sweden to be bound by collective bargaining agreements. And even if the companies are not bound by collective bargaining agreements, it's usual for the employees to be member of trade unions. And also, it's important to note that employers are obliged to have routines and procedures in place on how systematic work environment work shall be carried out. And also companies that employs more than 10 employees are obligated to have a written work environment policy in place. And also employees are entitled to a minimum of 25 paid vacation days every year. And when you're calculating this vacation pay, it's important to remember that vacation pay shall also be paid on any variable salary, such as bonuses, for example. And this is something that a lot of employers miss. And then lastly, if you intend to engage any consultants, we want to mention the risk of reclassification that comes with consultants. It is very important to make sure that the consultant is, in fact, a consultant under the Swedish law. It is under certain circumstances, there is a risk that a consultant can be reclassified and then be deemed to be an employee of the hiring company instead of a consultant. If that happens, there's a number of employment and tax implications that might happen. In general, the risk of reclassification is when a consultant is engaged on a full-time basis, almost exclusively on behalf of the company and for a longer period of time. And while you cannot really exclude that risk, the risk can be lowered if the agreements are entered into for a fixed period of time and only with consultancy companies, which are registered for business income tax. And that's that for me. So this is also a great segue over to tax.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marcus Svärd. I'm an associate specializing in corporate taxation at DLA Piper Sweden. My primary focus is on indirect taxes, particularly value-added tax or VAT. However, I work with a broad range of issues, including corporate income tax, permanent establishment matters, transfer pricing matters, and incentive programs. And today I will provide an overview of these key areas and introduce some essential aspects of Swedish tax law and that I think are relevant to your business interests, starting with corporate income tax and VAT. So for corporate income tax, as of 2024, it's set at the rate of 20.6% in Sweden. And the rate applies to all income derived from business activities conducted within Sweden, including income generated by permanent establishments, branches, and subsidiaries. In general, business expenses that are necessary for earning income, such as wages, rent, and interest on loans, are deductible. For VAT, the standard VAT rate is 25%, with reduced rates of 12% and 6% for certain goods and services. If you intend to conduct VATable business in Sweden, that is supplying VATable goods or services in Sweden, you are obliged to register for VAT as well, which in turn means you need to file VAT returns monthly, quarterly, or annually. Moving on to incentive programs or employee stock options. They are typically granted to employees within a company or a group of companies, allowing them to purchase shares at a predetermined price in the future, subject to certain conditions. These options are often provided at no initial cost for the employee, but may include restrictions on their disposal. Different incentive programs are taxed in various ways, but generally speaking, it's taxed as a benefit, and it occurs when the employee exercises the option to buy shares under the employee stock option provision. There's also a more preferential incentive program for certain startups, which is qualified employee stock options, or KESO, for which the taxation only occurs when the share, which the employee has purchased by exercising the stock option, is sold. And the taxation then takes place as income from capital rather than benefit taxation, which is a lower tax rate and as such more beneficial for the employee. Moving on to permanent establishments or PEs in Sweden. It refers to a fixed place of business through which a foreign company operates in Sweden and can include branches, offices, factories, construction sites, and other business facilities. Income attributable from the PE is subject to Swedish corporate income tax, and additionally, the presence of a PE can trigger other tax obligations, such as VAT registration and social security contribution for employees. Establishing a PE in Sweden can be complex, but generally speaking, Sweden has a relatively low threshold for determining the existence of a PE compared to other countries in Europe and the West. Finally, a short notice of transfer pricing rules in Sweden. Transfer pricing involves setting prices for transactions between related entities within a multinational enterprise to ensure that these transactions occur at an arm's length, which essentially means that it's set at the market price as if it was conducted between independent parties. Non-compliance with transfer pricing regulations can result in significant penalties. However, companies can ensure compliance through mechanics such as the advanced pricing agreements, or APAs, which are held with the Swedish Tax Agency. Finally, the transfer pricing rules in Sweden are perfectly aligned with the OECD transfer pricing guidelines. And that's it for tax right now. So I'm going to hand the word back to Felicia.
Hi again, and that took a bit longer than expected, but lastly, miscellaneous things that we wanted to take note of is the Foreign Direct Investment Act, which talks about how foreign entities invest in certain fields of operations, and this might be good to talk about since it also affects shelf companies. Another thing to think about when you invest in the EU is the GDPR, but we will share this PowerPoint afterwards, so we will skip this part and go straight to the Q&A. Thank you. Any questions?
I think maybe we got some comments.
Yeah. Henrik?
Yeah, thank you. I see that there is a question in the Q&A chat. So basically it's from Anatoly, who says that we are a health tech startup offering a virtual longevity coach. We have a Polish company and operate on a B2C model, but we also have partners in medical laboratories where our users can have their blood drawn for analysis. And the question then is, do we need to establish a branch when entering the Swedish market? And do you provide compliance services?
So that's a very specific question, and I think you will have to revert with that per email separately, and we will have to answer it that way.
Perfect. So we can orchestrate that after this session then. Are there any other questions from the audience?
And we will share this PowerPoint with all our contact details, so you can contact us if you have any questions directly regarding any of our subject that we've touched based on today.
Perfect. That's very kind of you. I just had one question, if there are no other questions from the audience. Since there's a lot of early stage companies here, and you talked a bit about patent and different forms of IP protection, can you give any indication about the pricing for these kind of registrations in Sweden? Is it considered expensive to do this kind of patent registrations or other IP protection registrations that is required?
On the top of my head, patent registration can definitely be a little bit costly, especially if you're using some sort of legal assistant, which is often necessary. And then it also sort of depends, because you can, of course, register with the National Patent Office. There's the Swedish Intellectual Property Office. They also have the trademark registration, for example. You can also reach out to the EPO, which Sweden is a part of both the European Patent Convention and the International Patent Convention as well. So there are different ways to register and still have this effect in Sweden. And usually for patents, the yearly fee can be quite high. But I don't think that Sweden is considered to be more or less expensive than any other European country. However, that is also something I can look into a little bit more specifically. I don't have the figures in my head, unfortunately.
That's fine. I just wanted to hear an indication, since we're doing these presentations across Europe. Of course, we want to highlight how Sweden can be suitable for the companies here. But with that in mind and with time in mind, I want to thank DLA Piper, the whole team. Thank you so much for a very informative, short and sweet session. And we will move over to the last session of today, which is a discussion. And I will invite Magali Roy Bentley from Norrsken and Per Hedberg and Hannah Weekly from Acumen Fund. Are you with us on the line? Bye, DLA.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect.
Yes, I'm also here. This is Hannah from Acumen.
Hi, Hannah. Great to have you here as well.
I have problems with my video. Let's see. Now we're here. Yeah.
Yes, that looks perfect. Thank you. And do we also have Magali from Norrsken? Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. And warmly welcome to this panel discussion. So we will spend the coming hour discussing a little bit around do's and don'ts when fundraising as an early stage startup. And as I mentioned, we have Per Hedberg from Sting Accelerator and Magali Roy Bentley from Norrsken, and we from Fund. So we have a great set of panelists here. And actually, I would like to start this session by just asking you if you could give a brief introduction of what your organization does and how you're working with startups and supporting them in early stage fundraising. And maybe also add a little bit about what you're excited about right now that is going on at your organization. So maybe I'll start with Magali. Please welcome to the panel.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Magali. I am the investment lead for the Norrsken Accelerator. So I also wore the t-shirt today because I do not pronounce Norrsken properly, as I'm not Swedish. I'm from Switzerland. And so it is a foundation that was founded in 2017 by Niklas Adalbert, who is one of the co-founders of Klarna. And he set up this nonprofit to be able to channel funds and also places to work for entrepreneurs that are trying to do good in the world, be that for either the environment or society. And so we do that through two ways. We have co-working spaces that we're setting up in different locations around the world. So we have one in Sweden and Stockholm. We have one in Kigali and Rwanda. And then we have one in Barcelona and Spain. And then soon more others to come. And then we also help channel funds to impact entrepreneurs. And in that respect, we have 5 different funds that invest from pre-seed all the way to Series A and growth stage. And so we have the Norrsken VC. Then we have the Launcher, which invests in deep tech startups. Norrsken VC also invests in European startups from seed to Series A. Then we also have the Norrsken 22, which is a growth stage fund that invests in African startups. We have Africa Seed Fund, which invests in pre-seed and seed in Africa. And then we have the fund that I am working for, which is an accelerator. And this accelerator runs an 8-week program with an investment of $125,000 into 20 companies per year. And then it runs over the summer. So we are just right now finalizing the cohort for this year. And then I'll wrap this up around the foundation and the funds to say that I am excited about the progress that we're going to be making in terms of the summer cohort that we're having that will be joining us in 1 month. So that's a little bit about the foundation. And then my role in the foundation in the accelerator specifically is to take that pipeline that we have around 3,000 applications down to 20. So that's about me. Thank you.
Yeah, exciting. Are these is the summer cohort published yet, or?
Yes, so we're doing it as in a teaser mode. So we're releasing 5 companies a week. So we've already released half of the cohort, so the 10 that are joining us. And then this Friday and the following Friday, we'll be releasing the next 10. So you can see that updated on LinkedIn.
Perfect. It can be good inspiration for a lot of the companies that will go through the Seeds of Bravery program as well, I think. All right, I will hand over to Per then. Please tell us a little bit about you and Sting.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. So I'm the founder of Sting, and we have built an ecosystem for helping innovators and entrepreneurs build growth companies here in Stockholm. We've been around for 23 years. We're also owned by a foundation, and we're a non-profit company per se. We have a large incubator operation and a large accelerator operation, the largest in the Nordics. We take on approximately 35 new startups per year, 35 per year. 16 to the accelerator, and around 20 to the incubator program. We have a couple of investment platforms linked to the incubator and accelerator. One is a traditional venture fund called Luminar Venture. We have also a very large angel investment fund called Propel Capital. We have now worked with 470 companies since 2002, mainly in climate tech and health tech. We focus today very much on complicated technologies, usually what's called deep tech today. I'm especially excited today about what's going on in space. We have several interesting space tech companies here, and I'm really interested in that area because it's just starting now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Per. So we have a summer cohort and space as exciting topics. Hanna, please welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about you and Acumen and what makes you excited right now?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Hannah Wheatley. I'm head of development and partnerships for Acumen across Europe. Acumen is an NGO that was founded on the radical idea that business can solve the hardest problems of poverty. We focus on investing in transformational companies, building sustainable markets, and preparing leaders with the tools they need to create a more just, inclusive, and dignified future. Since 2001, we have scaled companies and shaped markets in some of the hardest to reach communities on the planet. And over the past 20 years, we've impacted the lives of more than 640 million people by deploying $260 million to 215 businesses and training over 1,600 leaders. We provide different types of capital because launching a startup is one thing, growing it is another, particularly in places where traditional funding doesn't flow. So here, our patient capital fills the gap. This is money that we raise as an NGO and then that we then deploy as investments. And we invest over a 10 to 12 year period typically. And although patient capital is critical, it won't reach scale on its own. So underneath Acumen Capital Partners, a subsidiary wholly owned by Acumen, the NGO, we have our returnable funds, which have the power to turn a proven market movement across nations and continents.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I mean, the topic of today relates to early stage companies program that we're working on, and where we will take 400 Ukrainian companies through is very much early stage companies, a few employees, typically perhaps some traction, early revenues, or a product that is about to see if it has product market fit and so forth. And you all have vast experience in early stage ventures and also from emerging markets or complex market from Acumen Fund. So I want to hear from you. What are some of the success factors that you've observed for this type of early stage startups when attracting early funding? Per, perhaps you can start.
Thank you. Well, there's, I would say, 3-4 key things. For us, the most important thing is, are you addressing a big international problem or need? If you don't do that, it's very difficult to build a big company. So are you addressing a big problem and need? That's first thing. The next thing would be, can you verify that there is a customer somewhere who is willing to pay for your solution? So that's a key thing. The third thing would be, do you have potential customers engaged in your product development? Because if you don't have, there's a risk that you're developing something that doesn't really fit the market. So be very close to potential customers during the product development. And the thing would be the team area, that if you have a team with 2, 3, 4 persons that have complementary skills and having the right sort of motivational factors long term, then you can attract investors. But if you don't have that, then you also will probably have challenges.
Mm. And do you think that's something that companies should think about at an early stage to find something resources?
Yeah, absolutely. The team is usually 80% of the success, and if you are right on that from the very beginning, it will be much. If there's at least 1 or 2 persons that have the ability to attract other skilled talents, that is really important. If you don't have the tech team in-house, for instance, that is usually something that you just don't really like. You need to have the tech skills usually inside. You really need to have a person in the team that really likes selling. I mean, it doesn't matter how good your technology or if there is nobody good at selling, it will not fly.
Understand. And Magali, maybe if I turn the question to you, are there any other sort of key factors that you've observed in companies that have managed to raise funding?
I think so. What Per said is very accurate. And then sort of to add on that in terms of the selling, something that I see as very beneficial in early stage is to be very succinct and clear about what it is that you're doing and being able to tell who you're speaking to, what is the problem, what is the solution, what is the market. So having all this pretty clear is very important as investors are seeing so many startups in the space. So the clearer that you can be in what you are building, the better it is. And I've seen that as a success factor, because there can be some brilliant ideas out there. But if you dive straight into the deep end of the technical aspect, it might lose some investors. So if you're able to start off quite large and then as time goes on, progress down to the nitty-gritty, that is a good way to be communicating what you're building. And then I agree very much, team is very, very important. So looking at a team that has domain expertise, some sort of unfair advantage in the sector or in building that specific product, or even if that is just prior startup experience. And then another thing that I think is a great thing to push on is your unique selling point, as where investors are always looking for sort of ideas that can disrupt the industry. So if you're able to clearly communicate again what it is about your product that is different from what's on the market, or why you have a first mover advantage, I think that is very important. So just to sum up, I think something to really, really work on as a founder is your communication.
And is that something because that sounds like it's quite a lot of information that needs to be conveyed. How do you sort of split that information sharing with investors? How do you approach, you think?
So I mean, normally the first line of defense would be your pitch deck. So your pitch deck will include, let's say, something about the team, the problem, the product, the market size, and then maybe something on traction. And once you've nailed all of those, I think that you will have a very clear story.
And is that something you do? You have to meet investors at a lot of different occasions, or is it sort of a relationship building like that?
I mean, the more investors you can speak with, the better. Obviously, if you a lot of people try to go through cold outreach just to get as many as possible. But the classic, like if you can get a warm introduction from somebody, it's going to make a big difference. So if you're able to sort of start getting people on your side to be able to open doors for you, I think that always seems to prove to be the best way to get to VCs. But you can also be going through the angel network as well.
So a warm introduction never hurt.
Warm introductions are gold.
Yeah, perfect. And Hannah, I was thinking a little bit about the way you approach. I mean, obviously, you have many different types of investment vehicles, and but is there sort of a key factor in what capital that can fit what different types of companies in your view, and does Acumen have that sort of wide array of different types of investments that you can make in different types of companies?
We do, yes, we do. And I think what's important to consider from the perspective of the entrepreneur and the company is to really prepare like you mean it, whether it's a 10,000 investment from an angel investor, or even through Acumen, we have our angel grant cycles, or it's a $3 million Series A round led by an investment firm. The first step is really taking stock of where you are now and where you want to go, to have a practical understanding and a clear line of sight into qualities that investors can invest in companies, and that will look very different if it's a traditional VC versus an impact first and focused investor such as Acumen. So, for us, the two most important things are really character and competence. And so, from the perspective of it being approached, research, alignment, story, and data are really critical to be able to tell a compelling story about your company, but crucially to be able to back up that story with really, really credible data. Move investors from a fear of failure, which might often have in these kind of very difficult underdeveloped markets in which we're investing, to a real fear of missing out. And so we do really find that story, the values alignment of leadership and the value that they'll create is really important. So very practically, it wants to see a strong team in place, usually 2 or more founders, key operational management team. It's okay to have, as long as they're identified and actively in the process of being filled, a developed product, likely in iterative stages when we're talking about this early stage funding, but the team should have built something concrete. Early market traction demonstrated through a pilot, early sales, small partnerships, or upward growth trend that indicates people want to buy the product or engage in the service. And of course, crucially understanding your customer, including a definition of who are they, why will they use that product or service, and will they pay. And for Acumen, the models might look slightly different. We might be open to it not being the customer paying the full cost of the product or the service, because the customers that we're trying to target are people living in poverty or in low incomes. But that obviously needs to be a smart model and strategy, and you clearly know who is going to be paying the full cost of the service or product.
Yeah. And how is it that you can be a bit different from other VCs in that perspective, or other investors? Why is it that Acumen can look for impact first in these cases?
So as an NGO, Acumen raises money from philanthropists, grant makers, institutions around the world, and we promise to deliver them impact. They don't get returns. So they do make a grant to us, and then we deploy as an investor. But because we're not having to make any returns to other investors or shareholders, what it means is that we can focus on putting money where it's most needed, not where it's safest. So we, of course, want to see profitability, because that is a key part of sustainability that will lead to long-term impact. We can, and we are patient, so we can wait it out over 10 to 12 years, supporting wraparound technical assistance, leveraging our social capital to really support companies on this journey to success. It means that our risk doesn't have to match the rewards, that we can get really sort of low low digit returns and really focus on that impact first piece. So being a charity really does enable us to stay true to our mission and have flexibility.
I understand. So knowing what type of investor that you are approaching is clearly important in order to tell a compelling story. Then you also mentioned a little bit around traction. I just wanted to hear from all of you. What are some of the key measures of traction that you startups often overlook, but that are highly important to you as both as accelerators and with your investment offerings? Perhaps we can start, Per.
Yeah, there's it's a little bit different what type of sort of, if it's B2B or B first, but generally speaking, I mean, the stickiness of the product is really important. Do this product or solution create and want to have from a customer? Do they really want this over and over again? So the stickiness, how much people want to buy it over again, if it's that type of business model, that I think is a measure of sort of traction and how the traction develops. And also the price point, we usually look at that a lot. The price point is that sort of really verified in real traction? Do they get paying customers at this price point? And is this price point, do that produce good economies of scale, unit economics? So sometimes you have a fantastic solution, but the price point doesn't create the right type of unit economics, and then if you have investors that are looking for profit, that will not fly in the long term. Then you need more investors like you, Hannah. But yeah, so that would be my things: the stickiness, the unit economics, and the verified price point.
Thank you. And if I turn the question to you, Magali.
I think, yeah, it's also different from hardware and software, and then pre-revenue, post-revenue. So if it's post-revenue, then we're going to be looking at the classics or the monthly recurring revenue, also quite closely at the growth rate, and that's also in relation to how long have you been operating, which is another area that we look at in terms of how long have you been operating before getting the product off the ground, again, with some caveats on whether it's hardware or software. But normally we like to see that a product is sort of going to market, especially if it's software, within a year of launch of sort of creating the company, and that there's some traction going to be gained from that, so that we feel that you are moving fast enough for the market, as it is very competitive. And then another area is in terms of investors are looking for a source of recurring revenue. So sometimes founders will state that they have revenue, but it might be from projects, and there's no issue with that, sort of like getting off the ground, but just being clear as well with your founder, with your investors, where is revenue coming from. I think being transparent is a good thing, and to be able to have a storyline as to right now it's project based, but this is how we're going to get it into recurring, and we're validating this product with this subset of the market. Another one in terms of pre-revenue that we look at, and I think is also sometimes often overlooked by founders, is LOIs. And this is a very good place to be able to show that you are getting interest from potential customers with a non-binding agreement that gives an indication of how interesting your product is on the market. And there's fairly low buy-in from this, so it's a good way to sort of start getting traction even before you launch your product. And then this is not necessarily answering the question per se, because you're talking about traction, but this one thing I wanted to add that we sometimes look out for, which a negative signal, is something that we call accelerator hopping. So if we see that you're joining many accelerators, then the reason for that, especially if you're going for accelerators that have a niche, for example, deep tech accelerators that are helping you somehow with the product, but otherwise going to 3-4 accelerators does begin to somewhat signal in the negative direction that you're not really finding product market fit. So I also just wanted to highlight that. And for for founders to be very picky about the accelerators they decide to join.
Even though the office spaces might be very, very intriguing.
Even though the office space is fantastic.
No, but I understand. And LOIs, that's letter of intents.
Yes, letter of intent. So normally, yeah, exactly.
And I've always been a little bit curious about this discussion about pre-revenue and post-revenue. What type of companies do you sort of allow to be pre-revenue, if I can phrase it like that? What is it then you're looking for?
So that would fit into different boxes. Pre-revenue might be a software company that is very early. And in that respect, then we're going to be looking a lot at the team and the domain expertise and their ability, our sort of say on whether we think they can build this product. So any proof point that this product will be built, and that will normally just be around the idea of the product. And then it will also be related to, for example, hardware solutions that are pre-revenue makes a lot of sense because they do take a bit of more time to get off the ground. And again, anything that is pre-revenue, what's going to happen is that the investor is going to de facto just look very, very hard at the team, as there's not that many proof points in terms of the product other than competitors in the market. So those are the main areas they're going to be looking at. So I think that in terms of taking time revenue can make sense, especially if you're very early. Also, if you've pivoted, and again, that is completely okay. I think that a pivot can be super beneficial for startups. Again, back to my first point, if you communicate this effectively with your investors as to why you've pivoted, it can actually be a very, very good sign. We've had first come to us say, we started with this product maybe 3 years ago. We realized that that's not what the market wanted and we pivoted. And then everybody clicks onto, that's actually a great idea that you pivoted to that. And now we know that you have domain expertise because you did not manage in this one area because you realized it's actually in this area. And hardware companies take a bit longer sometimes to get to revenue, depending on how CapEx light or heavy they are.
I understand. Could you tell us what the pivot was?
So, for example, this pivot, I think it was to do with a startup that we invested in Africa, and they wanted to help provide solar power in Africa. And initially, they were the ones who were providing these solar panels and doing the installation and everything. And they realized that, okay, this is going to be a very long time to scale. Also, the margins were becoming quite difficult. And they were like, okay, why don't we become a player that helps people get access to solar installers? And on top of that, the biggest problem we're seeing is actually that people don't have access to finance. So it's not that people don't want solar panels, it's that they can't afford them. So they ended up becoming a place where you can connect the solar installers and also the fixes that and maintenance that are required, but also the financing aspect of it, which created a very interesting business model. And that company was part of our 2022 cohort, and they're called Sunfy. Okay,
very interesting. I'll look them up afterwards. And Hannah, what you're looking at companies, because you can basically allow yourself to have this impact perspective. Is there a particular sort of impact traction, perhaps, that you're looking for in the companies? Something that really stands out?
There's many indicators that we'd look at from an impact perspective, depending on the sector and obviously the stage of the company. But I'd say something that's key across everything is a net promoter score. So absolutely agree with the other panelists on everything that they've said, but to just build on this piece, for us, it's extremely important, and for any company, to really understand and measure customer loyalty and satisfaction. So NPS, does provide really valuable insights into the traction a startup is gaining amongst its customers. And as I'm sure you all know, it's based around one simple question, which is on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend product and service to a friend? Really helps to understand the promoters, customers who are highly likely to recommend, and the detractors, the customers who are unlikely to recommend your product and services, and really digging into analyzing that feedback and understanding the reason behind the scores. I think it really helps startups to make data-driven decisions and improve customer satisfaction and growth. And Acumen builds on this more general NPS, and we also do third-party evaluations and speak directly to customers so that we can understand the perspectives and the dimensions that are incredibly important to us as investors, such as the difference that that product or service is making in someone's life, whether it's helping them to increase their incomes, whether they have a sense of well-being and empowerment, or whatever the very specific dimensions of poverty that we're trying to address in that particular space. But from a profitability and a gaining market share perspective, and that general kind of NPS guideline and model is really important for us to adopt, and to know that startups are really interacting and engaging with that customer experience and data.
Yeah, it sounds like a quite cumbersome process. How do you go about finding out about the NPS and speaking to the customers?
Yeah, so from the perspective of speaking to the customers, Acumen created its own type of survey measurement called Lean Data. Mm-hmm. So this is acknowledging that we need something like touch and cost effective to be able to reach customers, providing us with valuable insights, as well as providing this as a service to startups who couldn't necessarily afford or have the bandwidth to conduct their own surveys. We got many requests to deliver this service for others, and we ended up spinning out this idea into its own for-profit company called 60 Decibels. So 60 Decibels is a global organization, and we contract them to be able to now deliver these light touch phone surveys that communicates directly with customers, ask them a set of key questions that are very specific to that product, that service, to that sector and that region, and to ensure that we're raising unheard voices and can really hear from the people who are paying and who are most influential in some of the contexts, in many of the contexts in which we work as well. Actually understanding who the end customer is can be more complicated than it might seem on the surface. So you might have men that are dealing with the payment side of things, but it's actually the women who are using a product or service beneath that, but they are just not as visible. And so going the extra mile to really understand those voices and being intentional about gathering that through our surveys and through other methodologies is really key.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Is that something that you, Per or Magali, would also see in the companies that go through your accelerator programs? There is a challenge in understanding the customer need, and have you seen any particular strategies for how you can address that?
As I said in the beginning, the best advice is to engage with potential customers day one, before you even develop anything, and have them engage in the development of the product, to have the customers help you with a specification of the product and then develop against that specification. Because if you do that, you have your first customers. So that's absolutely the best thing. If you can do that with a letter of intent or in a proof of concept study or something together with real potential customers, that is usually very successful. It's more difficult with B2C, but then you need to be out there and meet potential customers and perhaps work with focus groups and things like that, and test your hypothesis against focus groups to see if your product idea has a need in the market. It's easier with B2B.
Yeah, agreed. And then also, for example, on B2C side, finding your super user that will that just loves your products and is sending you messages all the time about the product, that you're able to iterate on it. And then I think also just asking for feedback from the no's as well, and also from people who say we don't want to use your product anymore, or what that might be. Just constant feedback to be able to iterate on the product and try to iterate as quickly as possible, and try to also stay focused as well in some sense. So not spreading too thinly either. So having a very strong team to make decisions about what your current North Star, as you do have very few resources in the early days. So you need to be quite careful about how you use them, so that you keep your ear to the market, so that you're constantly building a product that will eventually be the product market fit.
Yeah, thank you so much for those very concrete advice. A little bit related to that, and since we are presenting Ukrainian companies and Ukrainian companies that will go through this program, I'm wondering in a similar way, have you seen that companies that are trying to enter new markets, have you seen any particular strategies to understand the customer in the new markets? And have you seen any successful cases of companies that have managed to enter new markets? Perhaps I will go to Hannah, since we're doing the distribution. Have you seen any companies that have managed to do this sort of expansion, entering new markets in a successful way?
Mm-hmm. This is a big focus for us at the moment. We're currently launching a new initiative called Hardest to Reach, which aims to provide 70 million people with first-time off-grid access across 16 countries in sub-Saharan Africa that Acumen has never worked in before either. However, we've been investing in the energy space for a number of years and have a group of incredible companies across sub-Saharan Africa that have been really successful in scaling across their particular region. And so through this new blended finance fund, what we're looking at is building out the capacity of local suppliers and organizations in these countries that we've not worked in before and that our investing companies have not worked in before. The reason that we're choosing this model is that there's no investable companies to reach these specific groups of people. So there's a very clear gap and need. The reason that we're entering is because there is no one else. We're doing this in a way where it is expansion for our existing portfolio companies to enter into a new market through this kind of partnership and capacity building knowledge. So really leveraging the experience and knowledge of on-ground frontline organizations, whilst bringing in the expertise of these companies that have scaled in markets that might have looked quite similar to theirs 15 years ago.
So finding the local suppliers, the local partners that can really have the knowledge about the local markets is key, it sounds like. Magali, do you have any additional comments on that?
Yeah, I think that it's very important to find who is going to be the source to help you in that local market. So we have a company called Vitala, and they operate in Sweden, and then they also are now operating in the United States. They're working with a rehabilitation center there, and so they're able to go there and then start up a conversation with one of the centers, and then from there you sort of create more credibility in that new market. So if you're able to go to a new market and, for example, on the B2B side, sell to one of these customers, it can be a very good way for you to get credibility in a whole new market. So that's a very good way to go about it. And again, back to Per's point at the beginning, somebody who's excellent at this, and then also being very clear as to why the business model works in this. And then another option would be to, if you can, be able to hire somebody locally in that area who has more know-how of the sector that you're in, and then be able to open doors much quicker in that respect, if that is an option as well. Potentially getting an advisor on board who has scaled a company in the market that you're interested in can be another option to be able to tap into knowledge about other geographies that can then help you scale your company.
Perfect. Per, do you have any additional comments on?
Perhaps two small comments. Generally, you sort of underestimate the difference from your home country or starting country compared to the market you're entering. It's usually, not always, but usually there's a lot of differences that you usually don't understand before. so that's one thing. The other, and sometimes really important and good sort of advice is in some markets, its success factor is if you are perceived as a company started and located in the country. For instance, in France, it is quite more successful if the market see you as a French company. In some countries, it doesn't really matter that much, but in some countries, it's really good because this is an American company. That's good. So if you can create a brand, doesn't necessarily have to be legally, but if you can create a brand around your company that makes it look like a company in that country, that is sometimes also a success factor.
So that's good advice. And since the Swedish and Ukrainian flag are so alike, perhaps it won't be too difficult. Great. I wanted to touch on a topic that is I've noted that quite a lot of companies approaching VCs and angels and investors are perhaps not made for a VC model. Is that something that you all would agree with? And how do you think companies should assess whether their offering and their team and their business is actually suitable for a VC type investment or a business angel type investment? Per, perhaps.
Yeah, when we say VC, it's venture capital funds. It's usually a very specific type of structure. Legally, they actually called closed-end venture capital fund, which is a fund that is started. Then they usually have 10 years to invest the first 4 or 5 years, and then to do follow-on investments. And then usually the fund shall be paid back to the investors within 10, and sometimes you can prolong it 1 or 2 years more. So that's sort of the format, and that is a very specific type of investment, venture capital funds. That type of investment is suitable only for a very small percentage of all startups. Because if you're going to attract a venture capital fund, these closed-end 10 plus 2 years funds, you usually need to convince the fund that you can produce an increase in the value of a company that is 15 times from first investment, or 20 times, or even more. Otherwise, the fund cannot be profitable and pay back to their investors years later 3 times the money. So traditional venture capital fund is suitable only for those who can make likely that they can produce 10, 15 times values within the fund cycle. And many companies can't do that. They have perhaps can never do that, but can be fantastic, fine, nice companies. And some can do it, but it takes 20 years. So the VC fund is too often talked about as the solution, which is not the case.
And perhaps Magali, is there a way to assess that, you think, for early stage founders? Should they look at bootstrapping to see sort of the venture, or what do you think?
Yeah. I think Per put it really well. So not all cases are for VC, but there are many other ways to get funding. So, for example, if you're able to sort of sustain yourself with revenue, that's really great. And then you can see if there's going to be, for example, a tipping point. So you sort of get to a certain area where you feel that if we did go to a VC now, we really could show that we have the potential to scale and make those 10 times returns in the next 10 years. So it might be a question of timing as well. So looking into when would you want to raise? I think that's a very important question. And then see, for example, how long you can for. Then also you can get debt financing, potentially, if that makes sense for you. So there's a company here in Sweden called Gillian that do debt financing for startups. That's also very interesting. Again, you have to look into the dynamics and how that looks to you and for your startup. And then another another way to get funding is through angel investors. So angel investors can also be hugely beneficial to startups because it can potentially be somebody who has very good experience of a particular sector or a very large network or a prior entrepreneur themselves who help you with the journey. I think in relation to all of these models, these accelerators, incubators, angels, or nothing, it's very important to think about the relationship you will be having with these people as you will be with them potentially for 10 years. So it's a pretty long contract. So it's important that you are getting along with these either angels or VCs or accelerators. You have your best interests at heart, and that they're going to also help you grow, because not only does all these options come with capital, but some of them also come with a lot of extra help. So it's very important to really do your due diligence also back to whoever will be providing you with any capital.
Mm. And Hannah, do you have a little bit of a different model? Do you have any advice for companies to assess what type of investor, as Magali mentioned, different types of early stage financing, sources of financing?
Yeah, I think, ultimately the decision of how to fund your organization is a very personal one, especially when seeing outside capital. Obviously, the pros and cons that come with each type of capital. Obviously, the pros of bootstrapping is that it provides flex. You have that. You can prioritize profitability and sustainability over growth, which obviously growth is what VCs are really looking for. You can really make mistakes openly, and you can also make sure that you reserve that VC and other investor connections for the right time and opportunity. For many short enterprises, scaling through self-funded and revenue is a challenge, and it's not possible, but the necessity for outside capital really depends on how large and how quickly you aim to grow, which again is why it's really personal. But there is, we are in this area of massive social networks that can be tapped by entrepreneurs. So even if you don't have friends and family that can fund you, crowdfunding is increasingly taking the place of those, if people are in close relationships, and it also can give you some feedback on what people think about your product and service. Obviously, we're taking out debt. You have to make sure you've got the assets for those type of secure loans. Obviously, equity is another option. The con being that it will decrease your control over the direction of the organization and more decision makers around the table. This can be really valuable, depending on the type of investor and that you get around the table. We know that with Acumen, it's often a request for us to come in. Stake, especially for those mission-aligned organizations, because they want us to be able to protect the direction of the organization and not have mission drift to serve higher income customers, and that we kind of really support to bring other mission-aligned investors around the table. So yeah, the key takeaway is that you have to do your research on the pros and cons of each and just be really clear about where you are and what it is that you need, because there is a time and a place for everyone and everything, and not just try and rush towards the shiny popular thing, but what you.
Perfect. So to be able to actually formulate what you will use the funding for, and what is required for you to either repay the loan or give up some of your ownership and control. I see we have a question here from the audience, and then I just have one final question to you. But we have a question from Anatoly, who is saying that we are a health tech startup offering a virtual longevity coach. We launched a beta version 6 months ago and currently have initial traction. Our users are Ukrainians living in 8 EU countries. Now the question is, will this be a blocker when seeking investments, and do we need to attract any residents of these countries as well? Who feels most in limelight for this question?
I don't find it to be a blocker. It sounds like if they began operating 6 months ago, and they already have users, and they're in 8 different EU countries as well, I think that those are all really good things.
Yeah, I agree.
Perfect.
Oh yeah.
No, Natalie, it's not a problem. It sounds like you're doing really good. Great. I just have one last question, and it's a bit practical. But what should and shouldn't be in a pitch deck to capture the interest of investors in your point of view? Magali, perhaps you can start.
So linking back to what I said at the beginning, I think that the shorter the better. And I think that sometimes when you have a startup, it's like your baby and you want to put everything into it and show how amazing it is. But it's actually very good to pique the interest of whoever you're speaking with, so that they book a call with you, and then you really go into more details and sell your product, and also go into sort of like I said, the details. So I think the pitch deck should be approximately 15 slides. And also one of the VCs in Sweden called J12, they have a really good pitch deck support that gives an outline of what a good pitch deck looks like, and I'm a really big fan of it. And so it would relate to for just mentioning your team, and not as few words possible. Link to their LinkedIn is also very helpful. The team, the idea, the traction, the market size, and potentially your USP. I think the only thing that I would really say over and over again when it comes to pitch deck is short but sweet, always. Not too much information. There's very rarely a need, for example, for an appendix. So normally you can have 2 pitch decks. You can have the first one, which is sort of like a teaser, that is just like the high level, what the problem is, and traction. And then you can have a longer deck for a follow-up call, or if they have more questions. So I will think just keep it to for now.
Perfect. Thank you. I think here to J12 Ventures.
Oh, thank you.
Per, would you like to go next?
Not that much to add here. What I really want to see is how I have defined and know that this is a big problem. Because if I have not identified, it will become a big company. So that I really want to understand. And I also want to understand pretty quick the solution to this problem. Does that come with attractive properties for the particular customers, money-wise, entry, user experience, and things like that? So the need and the solution are sort of two. And the third thing, of course, is the earlier the company is, the more focus is on the team, because you have in really pre-seed, you have team risk, you have commercial risk, you have technical risk, and if the technical is not proven and the market is not proven, it's only the team. So how do you, in a very short time, convince the investors that this team will do this, regardless if you invest or not. And we are an execution machine. You can trust us.
So an execution machine, that's what we should encourage for. All right, Hannah, do you have any advice on this?
Yeah, I agree with all that's been shared so far. You know, just to make sure that you're not just throwing words like innovation around like confetti. You just get to the point of what it really means. How are you doing what you do faster, cheaper, better than the alternatives out there? Making sure you're sharing secret sauce of your company, your vision, mission, product market fit. And as the other panelists have shared, not to kind of overcomplicate, be short and sweet. You know, investors see so many different pitches. You really need a set of memorable sound bites that really ensure that you're standing out from the crowd and that your powerful narrative is peeling back the complexity of your organization, so that if they're really interested in finding out more, that they can lean in for a follow-up call and really dive into the nitty-gritty. But just making sure that you are so prepared and equipped with a powerful, well-organized, well-defined story and sound bites that really will make you stand out from the crowd.
Perfect. I think we will, on those notes and the panel discussion, Magali from Norrsken, thank you so much. Per from Sting, thank you so much. And Hannah from Acumen Fund, thank you so much. And I will just share quickly what the next cut-off dates for the application to the Seeds of Bravery program, when that is, and then we will actually end this session. So if you see my screen now, which I think you do, we have the next market discovery workshops for Benelux on the 3rd of July, and then for Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania on the 4th of July. So we will share with you the registration links now in the chat forum. And then the next cutoff date for the applications is on the 25th of June. So we will hope to see many new applications then. Thank you everyone for participating today, and thank you to all the panelists and speakers that have joined this session. I hope you have a nice rest of the day, and looking forward to receiving more applications.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye then.
Bye.
Bye.